The conflict in Ukraine enters a second week as the death toll on both sides mounts and the refugee crisis escalates. When will it end and how will it end? Hello, I'm Arnold Nawied and this is The Heat. The worst is yet to come in Ukraine. That's how French President Emmanuel Macron described the situation after a 90-minute telephone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, according to the Elysee Palace. Russia has captured its first major city in Ukraine, the port city of Kherson. Russian and Ukrainians held another round of talks in Belarus. Both sides agreed on creating a safe corridor for people to leave the country and humanitarian supplies to come in. CGTN's Nawied Jabarkhyl is in western Ukraine and has more information.
Into the second week of this war now, and the human cost is becoming plain to see by the hour. Ukrainian officials say that Russian artillery strikes and shelling and bombardment is causing a siege of major cities all across the country. In Mariupol in the south, local officials there say that there is no food, there's no water, there's no power, there's no electricity. Aside from that, further north in Kharkiv, there are 1.5 million people there experiencing heavy bombing and artillery strikes as well from the air. That's close to the Russian border, so you think strategically it would be one that the Russians try to secure quite soon. Kiev, the capital, is another area that's experiencing some bombing. Again, reports overnight and today of buildings being hit, some of those housing civilians, according to social media reports that we've seen, the videos coming out, lots of them day by day, as well as what Ukrainian officials are saying. Further south in the country, Kherson has become the first city to fall into Russian hands. It's a city of more than 130,000 people, and again strategically located as a port in the south of the country. The priority now for the Ukrainian side is to try and open up what they're calling humanitarian corridors. Many of them are coming to places like this, like Lviv, to try and get to the relative safety of the European Union. Countries like Poland, Hungary and Slovakia currently the top destinations for them. Those borders do remain open and people can go through with ease. Many from all across the country. We've seen people from Kiev come here, a lot of them places like Odessa as well, further east, trying to jump on trains, get cars, hitchhike however they can to save their children, to save their pets in some instances as well. Here's more from one person who had to flee the capital.
I go to the central station in Kiev yesterday at 12, and I try find a place in train till 7 p.m. Kiev in every hour was more dangerous than before.
So the escalation of this war, not just pushing people out now, it's also causing real concern for those urban, densely populated areas and the civilian casualties that looks almost certain to rise.
That was Nawied Jabarkhyl reporting there from western Ukraine. Well, there is a lot to discuss. Let's bring in our panel. From Kyiv, Ukraine, Valentin Yakushik is a professor of political science. From Moscow, Vladimir Sotnikov is the director of the Russia East-West Center for Strategic Studies and Analysis. Sergei Zhuk is a professor of history at Ball State University. He joins us from Muncie in the U.S. state of Indiana. And from London, Alexander Clackson is a researcher at the University of Lancaster. Welcome to all of you. Valentin Yakushik, let me start with you. You are in Kyiv right now. For a few days, we've been watching that convoy, which has been outside the city. It's a Russian convoy, of course. It doesn't seem to have moved in the last few days. But what is the situation like in Kyiv right now? Are people able to get in and out pretty easily?
Well, the state helped the local people to be evacuated. There were free of charge trains going from Kyiv to the west of Ukraine. The situation is different in different districts of Kyiv. I live on the left bank of the Dnieper, and our district was not hit at all. We have electricity, gas, all the facilities. And my relatives are 30 kilometers from us. They are for 8 days already hiding in a shelter beneath their house with shelling, constant shelling, fighting there. So situation differs. Well, Russian troops were trying to enter Kiev and they were rebuffed. Now there is evidence that there is first counterattack of Ukrainian forces and Russian troops are going away from the vicinities of Kiev. The situation has changed in stages. The first stage was a regime change operation undertaken by Putin. Well, he tried to learn from his Western teachers how to do that in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in many other countries in Latin America, but he was a bad learner from that. He didn't get prepared, and he was wrong in choosing a target. Ukrainians are good at self-defense. So, in fact, God sees Ukrainians have already won the war. Just there are some fightings and some sufferings. Russia cannot continue this war for a long time. There is no point. There was no point to start this war, and there is no point to continue it. The second stage was trying to capture cities. And what the Russian soldiers see, the local citizens, they have a kind of tactics of Mahatma Gandhi. They come to Russian soldiers and say, why did you come here? So the people who speak the same language, belong to the same faith, who were born in the same country, in one country in the Soviet Union, they do not understand what happened. And Russian soldiers, they do not dare to shoot at these local citizens. So it's impossible to wage war against Ukraine for two reasons. One, there is popular war of all Ukrainians. They united, and
right.
they will win. And another, just ordinary people, they do not want their brothers to participate in a fratricidal war. We will have to achieve peace between Russia and Ukraine. Russia will have to pay reparations. And also, Ukrainians will be interested that Russia has a decent place in the world, that it is not stigmatized. After there is regime change there in Russia, the leader has to be punished.
Vladimir Sotnikov, we just heard there from Valentin Yakushik telling us that, in his view, the Ukrainians have already won this war. What is the view from Moscow?
Well, actually, I'm not representing the state organizations and the government of Russian Federation. I'm just representing my own Center for Russia East-West for Strategic Studies. I would like to say that I disagree with my esteemed Ukrainian colleague. I don't think that Ukraine actually won the war already, because I agree that there are several stages in this war. So because this is already the second week for going into war. But as to my best knowledge, Russia actually is doing by plan, and the main reason for this conflict was that Russia didn't get guarantees from NATO countries and from the Western countries that it will be safe, that will be no any NATO weapons and missiles on Ukrainian territory. So I think that actually my point is that this operation would be finalized soon. I mean, probably another week, and then it will be evident.
Okay, Vladimir, you say the situation will be finalized soon. In fact, the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, he has been talking about that. Let's listen to part of what he had to say today.
We will solve all the problems the West creates for us, not because they want to ensure their own security. There is nothing about the security of the West here, but because they want to use Ukraine as an instrument to prevent Russia from having an independent policy. There are few countries on earth left that can afford such luxury. So the sanctions are sort of a tax for independence.
So Sergei Lavrov, they're telling us that he expects this to be resolved pretty soon, and you told us yourself just now that you expect there to be some kind of a solution in at least a week. What makes you believe that there will be some way of resolving this within a week?
Because the peaceful negotiations started. This is already a very good sign that Ukrainian delegation, the Russian delegation actually met twice, and they reached at least one small agreement on humanitarian corridors and humanitarian issues. This is a good sign. I think that further on there will be further negotiations. They would not stop, to my mind, and there will be reached a solution at some point. Well, again, my estimation that it will be a week or something like that.
Sergei, Zhuk, the Ukrainian President Zelensky, he has been talking, and he's painting a much bleaker picture of what the situation is like. Let's listen to him.
God forbid if we are no more. Then Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia will be next. Then Moldova, Georgia, Poland, and so on. They will march to the Berlin Wall. Believe me. The world must show its strength without fighting, without losing lives, because strength lies in diplomacy.
So President Zelensky there expressing his fears that this war could expand. He says it could expand all the way up to Berlin. What is your view on where this is heading right now?
First of all, this is a crime. This is war against independent country. I have a lot of friends and my relatives living in Kyiv and other parts of the country which were attacked without any reason. And what this Russian colleague told us is not a reason. It's attack. It's aggressive act. It's act of aggression. Moreover, now we know that Russian troops behave like fascists. They shooting ordinary people, civilians. We have, we collecting now all proofs of barbarian usage of weapons by Russians. They use so-called vacuum bombs. They use this so-called cluster munition in Chernihiv, in Kyiv, in Kharkiv. Thousands already died, civilians. You can find this on Google. Go to the photos of downtown of beautiful European, originally Russian, then Imperial Russian, then Soviet city, Kharkov. Theater of opera destroyed. Municipal buildings destroyed. Look at what happened in Chernihiv. What happened in Kyiv. Terrible vacuum bombs used by Soviets against Afghanistan, then Russians in 1899 against Grozny, and then against Aleppo. They used against Ukrainians. People who speak sometimes the same language. I speak Russian, frankly speaking. And now we need to announce Russia as a country which support these fascist leaders like Putin or Lavrov. Russia is a country of aggression. They should be punished in international courts. Moreover, we now try to select petition.
Yeah.
And we send this petition to United Nations.
Yeah.
To move United Nations troops there and help.
All right, Sergei. I want to get a very
right. Well, let me finish because we listen to a Russian colleague who still represent the side of aggressor. Ukraine is not guilty. Ukraine did not attack.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. But I want to give our Russian guest a chance to respond to what you're saying. Vladimir, very quickly, briefly, if you can, please. What is your response to what you've just heard?
Well, actually, I disagree with my Ukrainian colleague because this is not aggression. This is a special operation. And again, I'm just reiterating what I was going to say. This actually conflict started because there was a threat of deploying nuclear weapons and NATO weapons on Ukrainian territory. Okay. That's my point, actually.
All right. I want to go to Alexander. I want to go to Alexander Clackson now. He's in, one moment.
It's Putin propaganda.
All right. One moment there, Sergei. I will get back to you. Sergei, I will get back to you. I have to move on. Alexander Clackson, I talked earlier on about that news conference that Sergei Lavrov held in Moscow. He also said during that news conference, he said that in their time, Napoleon and Hitler tried to subjugate Europe, and now the Americans have subjugated it. He says the Russians see this as an existential threat. And given that NATO has expanded right up to the Russian border, is this a valid Russian fear?
Well, Russia seems to think so. You're absolutely right in saying that Putin believes that he has to wage this war in order to protect Russia's security. It is true that NATO's borders have obviously expanded towards Russia. I mean, you can look at it as two sides of the story, really. On the one side, you could say that NATO has never invaded or never attacked Russia, and so from that point of view, you could say that Putin is being slightly paranoid. There is no threat from NATO when it comes to Russia's security. On the other hand, Putin has this kind of Cold War mentality, and he just genuinely views NATO as a threat to Russia. What can you do about that? He's the president of the country, and that's what he believes. So how do we move forward with this? Well, Russia has put forward their conditions. They want Ukraine to be demilitarized, and they don't want Ukraine to join NATO. And from my point of view, I believe that Ukraine will have to take this path in order for this conflict to end. We've heard from Putin today. He said that this is a non-starter for him. He's not going to negotiate on this point. And he also mentioned to Macron that the longer Ukraine waits on this condition, Russia will keep adding new conditions as time goes on. So in my view, I think perhaps Ukraine should consider this. To my knowledge, Russia is not opposed to Ukraine developing economic relations with Europe. In fact, I think Lavrov even mentioned that Russia wouldn't be opposed to Ukraine joining the European Union. So perhaps a solution to this is for Ukraine to consider military neutrality, to not join NATO, to remove all military equipment from the territory of Ukraine, but at the same time continue to cooperate with Europe, and perhaps even one day join the European Union. Perhaps that would ensure that all sides are satisfied with that structure.
Okay. Alexander, just one point. You just mentioned a moment ago that President Putin has got something of a Cold War mentality. Is there a Cold War mentality that's also developing on the West European side?
Well, I think unfortunately you can say that from Russia's point of view, they feel hard done by for the last 20 years. They feel that Russia was ready to join the European security structure. Russia was ready to join the West. Putin even himself mentioned a few weeks ago, before the start of the war, that he asked Bill Clinton for Russia to join NATO, and that's been very clear that Putin was eager for Russia to become part of Europe, part of the West. But he feels that West never really accepted Russia, or perhaps they treated Russia as kind of a younger brother, if you like, kind of small brother, not to be taken particularly seriously. Not to be taken, not to take this security concern seriously, and that's when it kind of all went wrong, really. Russia just wants respect from the West. They want to be treated as an equal partner. The West doesn't provide that, and that's where the problem is.
All right, let me get Sergei Zhuk's view on what we've just heard. You heard Alexander tell us there that Russia is not opposed to an economic relationship with Europe, but they have to remain militarily neutral.
Yeah, I understand the logic for our conversation, but it's complete nonsense. Now people suffering. They're dying in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, in Mariupol. And we now try to justify some maniac, some, terrible logic of imperial thinking, restoring of this glory of Russia and Russian pride. Now it's a crime. We need to, to defend the people who are suffering. Thousands already died.
Right.
It's too late now to try to justify this criminal in Kremlin and his Russian subjects who try to justify his behavior.
All right.
We now need, we now need United Nations interference.
Okay.
And United Nations, China, all the countries need to step in and stop this massacre.
Okay, I want to move to Valentin Yakushik. Valentin, you said in a recent interview on the German television channel Deutsche Welle that you doubted that there would be a Russian attack on Ukraine. You said at the time that you thought it was a deadly geopolitical trap. Something changed. What does it look like now?
I think my soul, academic and civic, is clean, is pure in this respect. What I was talking on German television, what I was writing in my articles and giving interview to Indians, I was saying there is no chance for a war between Russia and Ukraine. It cannot happen. I should have said that there are some limitations, some reservations when it may happen. If the leader is mad or is possessed by evil demons, or when he is an agent of a competitor country, competitor state, competitor civilization.
Right.
He did the same thing Russian leader as Saddam Hussein did when he attacked Iran and then when he occupied Kuwait. So it was incredible to see that the leader of the country, of such country, with such economy and culture, can do that. It's the criminal act not only against Ukraine, it's against Russia. It's against the East Slavic civilization because he created fighting and animosity among the people who are very close to each other. So what I was saying, it was explaining to Russians, don't dare to go here with your army. You will be beaten. You will destroy yourself. So now is the problem. Well, some are in a poetic way, they are suffering, but some should be with a clear mind and saying and thinking what will be the next steps, how we can cure the situation. There is such a chance. And the West should try.
Vladimir Sotnikov, Russia is now facing some of the harshest sanctions that have ever been imposed on a single country. In fact, wealthy Russian businessmen are now being targeted as well. These are businessmen who have a close relationship with the Kremlin. Yet if you listen to the tone and the actions of people like Vladimir Putin, of people like the foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, they don't seem to be deterred. They don't seem to be intimidated in any way. What do you make of that?
Well, actually, before answering your direct question, I would like to remind my esteemed Ukrainian colleague that since the reunification of Crimea with Russian Federation, there was an undeclared war of Ukrainian army against then self-proclaimed republics, now independent republics in Donetsk and Lugansk. So how can he justify the shelling of the people? I understand that he might say that this is a separatist republic, but there were people, there were women, there were children, and they were dying because of the shelling from Ukrainian side. This is the first thing. Another thing I would like to say, that Russia is not feeling intimidated. And we actually stand for the cause which is concerning the non-militarized and neutral Ukraine. So this is actually the point that Russia is reaching to get. And another thing I would like to say, that this is not a good way to start insulting the leader of Russian Federation. This is actually not even emotional. This is disgusting.
Okay. All right, I want to go to Alexander Clackson.
Him is disgusting and criminal behavior. He is criminal against the Russian people, against the civilization. It is a mortal mistake.
Russia is not insulting Ukrainian leader.
Can I tell something for you, Chinese viewers who will watch our debates?
Go ahead.
May I have 1 minute?
Yes. You got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just need to explain to people in People's Republic of China who see in this debate that in 1931, when imperialistic Japan attacked China and created Manchukuo and exploited Chinese, killed millions of Chinese, created concentration camps, this aggression created a nation, Chinese nation, and Mao became a leader of communists who led this country to defeat.
Okay, Sergei, I'm afraid,
the same
Sergei,
happened with Putin aggressing.
Yeah, I don't.
In 2014, I finish.
Okay.
In 2014, when he attacked Ukraine because of the Maidan revolution and annexed Crimea,
all right,
and then annexed Eastern Donbass, he made all of us, all Ukrainians living in Ukraine, living in diaspora, be Ukrainian patriots.
Okay.
He did not kill Ukrainian independence. He created strong, independent Ukraine.
All right, I get your point there, Sergei. I have to move on to Alexander Clackson. Alexander, I want to play you a short excerpt from a speech the American political scientist John Mearsheimer made in 2015, 7 years ago, at the University of Chicago. Let's listen to this.
What's going on here is that the West is leading Ukraine down the primrose path. And the end result is that Ukraine is going to get wrecked. What we're doing is encouraging the Ukrainians to play tough with the Russians. We're encouraging the Ukrainians to think that they will ultimately become part of the West, because we will ultimately defeat Putin, and we will ultimately get our way. Time is on our side. And of course, the Ukrainians are playing along with this. And the Ukrainians are almost completely unwilling to compromise with the Russians, and instead want to pursue a hardline policy.
So, Alexander, that was John Mearsheimer talking 7 years ago. And listening to that, could have this been avoided?
Absolutely. You know, my position has always been that this war could have been avoided if the West, together with Ukraine, would have agreed that Ukraine will not be joining NATO for the foreseeable future. To be frank, all the leaders, I think, believe that Ukraine wasn't going to join NATO anyway for the foreseeable future. It just wasn't really stable enough, and the fact that Russia is just on the border would have created a huge security threat for Europe. But for some reason, none of the Western leaders wanted to say it out loud that Ukraine wasn't going to join NATO. And here we are. We're now having this war. And I would just also like to add the following. We can see from the debate we're having, especially between the colleagues between Moscow and Ukraine, that this is obviously a very emotive situation.
Yeah.
And going back to the very first part, when one of the colleagues said that this will end within a week, I don't think this is the case at all. You know, I think from Russia's point of view, they want Ukraine as a neutral country.
Yeah.
Ukraine doesn't want to go that way, and it seems to me that this conflict will go on for quite some time. But to be honest, I think Russia has the military capability to make progress in Ukraine, and I think unless Ukraine agrees to some kind of a neutral status, it will come to a situation where Russia will keep adding more conditions to Ukraine in order to reach a ceasefire.
Okay, and that's where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us on the show. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.